Okay, I think I will begin now. Let me just move this aside. Okay, welcome everyone to this tutorial. Clip Studio has been one of my favorite programs to use for drawing for a while. And I know it can be really intimidating to start, especially when a lot of the tools don't really share common features with other tools. Other programs. So it can be a bit of a learning curve at first. But this program actually goes on sale pretty frequently. So if you're looking to get this program, I recommend waiting until there's a sale. And the sale is usually about half price, which is a pretty good deal. Okay, so this program has two versions. There's the Pro version and the EX version. The naming of these versions can be a little confusing. If you're wondering which one to get, it depends what you want to use it for. So Clip Studio used to be called Manga Studio, and so as you can tell, it's from the name, it's very focused on making comics. But because the program expanded and added other features and stuff, they have changed it to Clip Studio. So the Pro version and the X version are actually very similar. The only differences are the X version or EX version will have more comic making features and tools for you to use, and there will be less limitations in regards to animation and also 3D modeling. I won't really go too much into the animation and 3D in this tutorial, mainly because I don't really use it myself, and learning about them would take a long time. So we're just going through the basics today. Now, when you first get the program, the first thing that will open up is this window here. I call this the dashboard for Clip Studio. You can make an account and you can log in, and you have like, actually I don't really know what this is. You can, yeah, you have a little bit of a cloud in here, but what I find really helpful is if you have two or more devices that you want to use Clip Studio on, after you log in, you actually don't need to re-enter your activation code. They will have it stored in the cloud. And I found this out recently when I got my new laptop and I lost my email for the activation code. But fear not, just log in and you'll be able to reactivate your program without much trouble. So we'll soon go over some of the other things here, like the assets later. So first you just want to go into Paint, which will launch this program, which is the main one. I have both of them pinned to my taskbar for ease of access. So first, we'll just look at some of the tools here and panels. So if you've used tools, if you've used programs like Paint Tool SAI and Photoshop, you'll notice that these panels are similar. and everyone's gonna have a different layout just based on what you're more comfortable with. This is what I've set up. Just the things that I use most often: the sub toolbox, which I will go through later, the tools property, color wheel. I have the color slider here. On the right side, I got the navigator. I have the sub view panel, which I will talk about later. And of course, the layers panel. There's a history behind it. I don't actually use that very much, oddly enough. So the difference between Clip Studio and other drawing tools is that this has a thing called subtools. Now, if you know anything about Photoshop, it's kind of like how you can right click on each tool and it will have options of like other tools that are associated with that tool. But for Clip Studio, you have a panel, and each tool here has subtools that will give you other options. And I find this really interesting and very organized, so that you can see what you can do with each one of them. Now this one's pink for a good reason, and I will talk about that later. Let me just go to the default G Pen here. I think the tools themselves are more are quite straightforward. You've got different kinds of quote unquote brushes, and then you have like airbrush and decorations and eraser, which are pretty straightforward. And then down here you have some manga tools or comic creation tools, balloon and stuff. I don't really use these as much. Oops, I just reordered that by accident. But yeah, very straightforward. Okay, so first off, we're gonna look at changing shortcuts. So when you go into a new program, you might be more comfortable with using another program that you've used before, for example, Sai. And you might find that the first thing you notice is that some of these tools share shortcuts. I actually think I took this off. So if you press, yep, I can't do that anymore, but if you press P, for example, by default, P will be both pen and pencil tool. So that will toggle between these two. And sometimes you might download a brush and you want to use that and set that as P and not have them toggle between the two. So we're just gonna go into File, and down here is shortcut settings. When you open this up, guys, if there's anything that you can't see when I'm talking about it and you can't see it, just let me know in the VC chat channel and I will be able to see that straight away, because I have that on my second screen. Okay, so when you've opened this up, you can resize to your liking. Down here in the Dropbox, you have tools. You can change pretty much anything in this program. This is the main menu that's like file, edit, and stuff. You can basically change anything in here. And if you've set up a shortcut key that is already signed to another one, it will automatically toggle between the two. So it won't take it off the other one like how Sai would do it. So let's go into tool. Pen, for example. I've set G Pen as F, just so I won't keep toggling between the two. Turnip pen? Wow, that's a great name. And the great thing about it is if you download your custom, if you download brushes from the assets shop, you can also set the shortcuts for them. I have this brush that I downloaded that I use for hair, and H stands for hair, so I set that as H. So you can either double click and just press any key to set that, and then click again. It will just set your shortcut key to that. This is quite simple, really. Yeah, if there's anything that you want to set the key to, for example, I think I want to change. Yeah, one thing that I use a lot is the mirror, the horizontal flip view. Let me just have a look. It is in main menu somewhere. I think it's in view. View. Yes, horizontal, flip horizontal. I set this key because it's what I'm used to. It's the one underneath backspace. I've always used this key for Psy and other programs as well, so this doesn't have a key by default, so I have set this key up. And that's about it with shortcut keys. Okay, so let's go into brushes. Right, before we go into that, I'm going to show you guys making a new file. So you can either go File New or Control N, which is basically the same thing for every program. If you already have Pro version, you might notice that I have one extra button over here called Printing of Fanzine. I personally don't use this. What I use is just comic settings. So the difference between Pro and X in regards to comics is that I have this multiple pages thing here, and also this setting for fanzine. I will show you guys this at the end, or nearing the end. Just gonna write this down in case I forget. Now, if at any time you have any questions for me, you can just type that in VC chat. I won't be able to see it in main chat because I've just got VC chat open. Okay, so but I mainly use illustration, which is probably about 90% of you guys, unless you are actually making a comic, and I personally am actually making a comic right now, so I will be able to tell you guys about some of the comic settings. But when you first open this up, after you downloaded, you might have, oh, not this. Create illustration. Nope, that's not it. Template. Nope, that's not it. Well, okay, now that we're in the templates, we can have a look at what they have. It's basically for making comics, so I'm not really gonna look into that too much. I think what you have is this one is probably the first thing you see when you open it up. This really confused me the first time because it's got these little markers here and I didn't really know what they were for. So when I first opened this up, I was so confused and I put off learning this program for about 2 years. So I know how you guys feel. But we mainly will be using illustration. Now the unit I'm using is millimeters. That's just what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with. But the default will be pixels. and you can just change that to whatever you feel like, and that will be the go-to every time you make a new file. I'll just quickly go through what DPI is, or resolution here, for those of you who don't understand that. I've set mine up as A4 and 600. So for printing, well, DPI stands for dots per inch, and this is mainly used for printing. So if you're not thinking of making anything for print, you don't really have to think about this. But let me just tell you, my rule of thumb is to always go big. And personally, I go with 600 at A4, just in case I want to ever blow this up to A3. Because for printing, it's usually 300 DPI, which will give you the optimum printing quality. So imagine 300 dots per inch square. I think that's how it is. This would definitely come out looking better than 72, because you'll have more information stored in this square inch. Then, well, you have more stored with 300 than 72. So if you actually try to print out a 72 DPI image, it will look a little bit pixelated. So the reason why I have 600 is because I can blow it up one size without losing any information. Right, so that's enough of that. Let's go okay and create this. As you can see here, I have the ruler set up. You can toggle that on and off with Control R. That's just an option. Okay, so with brushes, so the subtool panel here will tell you all the other options you can do with your tools. And this is the same with pen, pencil, and brush, which also has watercolor and oil paint. This is very organized of them to separate them into different types. And they're called subtools instead of like brushes. But I still think of them as brushes anyway. And you can download brushes that other people have made in the Clip Studio dashboard, quotation mark, by just clicking over here. Because, I mean, they have some really good default brushes, but often we want to find other brushes that we're more comfortable with working with. So this is the menu for the assets shop. I mean, I like to call it a shop, but a lot of them are free. The green ones here are free. And you have noticed that a lot of them will have other languages in their title. But don't worry, if you just type in what you want in the search bar, chances are they have the English tags in there. So for example, I have heard good things about the Dami pen, which is a pen tool. So let's just type that, Dami pen. Oh, well, that's a lot of different Dami pens. Where's 1 and 2? So you can see here there's download information. I normally just go with the one with the most downloads, which means it's like probably a good pen. Let's go into the Dami pen page. So you can interact with these brushes. They're kind of like a web page on its own. I think you have to log in for that. Okay, so let's just go and download this one. Press download. Oh yeah, just login required. Oh, there's my information. You guys did not see that. Okay, it's loaded. Right, so now we can download. So this will pop up and it's going to tell you that your material has been downloaded. So Clip Studio has its own like FAQ website, which has basically all the information you need to know about how each of the tools and features work. So if you don't know how to operate anything in this program, you can basically just Google Clip Studio, for example, G-Pen or something, and it will tell you all you need to know. And I think this is really great for a program to actually have its own FAQ and be very informative. I think this Clip Studio has done pretty well in comparison to other programs. So let's close this and go back to our program. Now, I don't know, I can't remember if this is present in the default, but you can go into Window and bring out wait, I don't know. What is this? Material. Okay. Window. Workspace? Nope. Material. Here we go. Sorry, that took a while. Down near the bottom, you have material. And this will bring up your material palette or panel. Just go into download here, and this is what I have previously downloaded before, but this is the one that you have just downloaded. It will be at the top. And because this is a pen, I'm gonna go into the pen tool on the left side, and be in the pen subtool panel, and I'm just going to drag this in here and drop that. Now it will show up on the very bottom with whatever name that it was named. Now let's go to what we have learned previously, the shortcut settings. Pen, Dali pen, here it is. Let's give it D. I don't know if D has any other shortcuts, but let's go with, double click, D. You have set this pen on your shortcuts. Let's see, oh yeah, there's another dense watercolor. Okay, so if I want to take dense watercolor off, it will go into brush, watercolor, dense watercolor. You can see that this is D. Now delete shortcut, and now if you press D, it won't toggle anymore. And let's try this out. Yeah, this is pretty much what it should be. Yeah, it works pretty well. So downloading and installing assets is really, really simple. And now I have this tool property panel open. I will talk more about this when we get to making your own custom brush. But for now, we can just have a look at what these do. Brush size, that's very straightforward. Opacity, anti-aliasing, gap. This one has, oh yeah, fixed. Okay, sharp angles. You can always play around with these. And if you go and click into this little wrench icon here, this will bring out your brush settings. Your brush size, ink, anti-aliasing, brush shape. We won't really look, yeah, let's not touch this. Okay, brush tip. This will show you what your brush tip looks like. And brush density. Now, if at any point in time you want to change these things, you can change the slider here. Porky says, for those who want some Clip Studio brushes, I have some links of some pretty ones. Thank you, Porky. I will probably include the links when I upload the video as well, and I will be posting that in the what's it called, learning/inspo channel when the time comes. Porky, you can share that at the end. And I'll tell you guys about how to install brushes. It's really, really simple, really. Okay, so let's keep on looking at these things. Spray effect. You can pretty much just play around with these to see what they do. Now, there's this little eye icon here. If there is a setting that you will change quite frequently, you can click the eye button. Let's go into, for example, correction, maybe tapering. Okay, wait, that's already shown. Okay, brush tip, maybe brush density. Okay, let's just say you when you paint, you might want to change the brush density pretty frequently. Click on this little box here and it will show the setting in your tool property. Because there's just so many different settings that you can change in a brush settings, not all of them will be shown by default, so you can turn them on and off as you see fit, and it will be made easily accessible on the left side. I'm just gonna turn that off. Yeah, I will talk more about the settings when we make our own brush. Okay, so next thing we're gonna talk about is the decoration tool. Pencil, brush, airbrush. I mean, might as well just go over what the other brushes do. I mean, airbrush is pretty simple. You can download these as well. I think I have Leaf Blend here. I've downloaded this myself to make some leaves. And this is like randomly generated leaves. Okay, so decoration. Now this thing is new. Well, when I say new, I mean it's not present in some other programs. I mean, it is in Photoshop. There's some similar things in Photoshop. But basically, it's like a stamping, or like imagine if you have like a washi tape or something. People call it the tape brush. These are some of the default ones available. There's like sparkling effects, hearts, artificial scenes, like caution tape. Oh, isn't that cool? Woo! Caution, keep out. You can do like a shift, hold down shift. Oh, so pick a spot, tap that, hold down shift, click again, and that will give you like a straight line. There's some really interesting ones by default. Soap bubble. Ooh. Wow, look at that. Don't mind me, I'm just having some fun. Alright, so there's clothing. Simple frill. Wee. And lace. Yeah. They have some really interesting assets, I guess, that you can use for this. And I will talk about vectors very soon. One thing that I forgot to mention during the live tutorial is the transparent brush. I mean, I'm gonna call it the transparency brush, just for a better understanding of how it works. But basically, it's kind of it's located here. It's like your third color. You've got your foreground color, your background color, and then you have the transparent color, air quote color. So basically how this works is it's kind of like eraser, but you're erasing using your brushes. So in Photoshop you can do this with the eraser tool, and then select the brush tip shape. But in here it is the transparent color. And how it works is, so for example, if we go into airbrush and leaf blend, let's just use black here. So for example, if I want to make a bush, that sounds weird. If I want to make like an area of leaves, this is a brush that I downloaded online. Let's just make an area with leaves. Okay. Now, you might want to delete some areas. Or actually, maybe a better demonstration would be if you're drawing someone sitting under the tree, and you want to show that there's light coming through. Okay, let me just demonstrate. So here's a tree. It's just gonna be a really rough tree, just for demonstration's sake. And then you have a little guy sitting under the tree. Just very quickly. Yeah, I've got some roots, whatnot, and then it's like grass. Okay, so new layer. If you want to show that there's light coming through and you're making shadows falling on top of your character, there will be gaps in the leaves. So if we're gonna use a gray color for shadow, let's just use gray to demonstrate. Let's just pretend that this is part of the shadow. And you want to erase out leaf shapes. Now you can download an airbrush like I did, Leaf Blend. You can look this up in the assets if you want to use this. I'm just gonna make that smaller. Now go in here and select the transparency, or you can use the shortcut C. This will toggle between your background and foreground colors and your transparency. Now when you have this selected, just go over, no, that's too small, that's too big. Okay, perfect. Go over your characters with this transparency brush, and because of the way that this brush toggles between different transparencies, this is gonna have a little bit of a layering effect, and it's gonna look a bit messy. But if it's something like another pen or brush, let's go with something like gouache, if that's how you pronounce the word. Actually, I don't really know how you pronounce it. Basically, this will allow you to erase using different brush tip shapes. And these areas that have been erased or painted with transparency will become transparent. And that's basically how transparent paint works, I guess. Okay, so the next topic we're going to talk about is the special fills. So here we go into the fill tool. But before we talk too much about it, I'm just going to demonstrate by drawing something. Let's use our newly acquired dummy pen. Okay, what are we gonna draw? I mean, I guess I could just draw a random shape. I don't even know what this is. Or maybe like a face. I normally go with like an oval. Their face. Okay. Whew. Alright, so let's go into the fill tool. Make a new layer underneath the lines one. Let's just rename this to lines. And make a new layer underneath. So before we go into that one, go click on the lines layer, and over here there's a button called set as reference layer. Now if you click this, it will have a little symbol over here. Might be easier to see if I go outside. It looks kind of like what do you call them? Those lighthouse? Yeah. English. So it looks like a lighthouse. So this will reference your lines layer with when you use these fill tools. You can either use this one or this one. I think the difference between these two is if you have other layers present as well. But if you click on refer only to editing layer, it will only refer to the top layer, the one that you have set as reference. I think. Don't quote me on this, actually. Whew. But I mean, if it works really strangely, you can always just test either one of these. Let's just go with the first one for now. So you can change the color. Let's just go with a skin color. Now, when you're on the second layer, I think I have close gap. Okay, let's just give this a go. Oh, nope. Okay. In the tool property panel, you have a thing called close gap. So when you see here, I have little gaps around the circle. Let's just call this circle or shape. So if you have this ticked and maybe turn up maybe all the way to 5. Yeah, this will close the gaps for you. Because we all know our hands are not really, you can't really trust your hands to fully close these gaps sometimes. Oops. But if you check close gap and set this up high, you can play around with these settings. When you dump the colors in, it will close these gaps for you. And this will not disturb your lines layer, so this is really useful and really fast for if you want to dump color, flat colors onto your layers underneath really quickly. There's this thing called area scaling as well. Now, if you check this, I'll just go into the lines layer and then turn down the opacity so you guys can see. Let's just use this shape. Area scaling checked. Let's go with a smaller number, maybe a 7. Now, if you click, go back to your other layer. If you click inside this shape, see here we've got an overlapping of this layer and your line layer. Because you set this to 7, this means that when you fill the area, it will go over into the line so that you won't have any blank gaps underneath. And I find this really helpful for if you're dumping colors and you don't really want those little gaps. Let's just clear this layer and test that out on this face here, or what resembles a face. See over here, whereas before we have the gap closing at about here, now it'll go over a little bit. And over here you can see that your bottom layer has gone into the line, but it won't go over, I think. Let's just go all the way up to 20. Undo this, and yeah. Unless you have an open gap here, if you've closed everything, it will never go over the lines. So I think this option is pretty useful. Hey guys, hello from the future. This is a follow-up video about what wasn't really working during the live tutorial, and that was the close and fill. Now, I didn't realize that I had, well, I kind of didn't really understand this, but I had selected a different option here, which means that it wasn't going to work the way I wanted it to. So I have here on the top layer some randomly drawn lines, but ignore the top one. But I have enclosed spaces, and here is one with a little gap here. So what I wanted to show you with close and fill is if you go into the tool property and look at this target color drop box, there are some different options that you can look at. I had this selected, treat semi-transparent as transparent. This is really confusing, to be honest, so we're just gonna ignore that. And we're just gonna look at some of the other ones that might be more useful for us. So let's begin with only transparent. Now, if you're planning to use this close and fill tool to plot down base colors, this is probably what it's best for. So top layer, you have your lines, and then bottom layer, you can also set as reference layer. Okay, bottom layer where you want the colors to be, select, let's make it a nice green color. Now, if you have only transparent, this will only fill the transparent areas, as the name suggests. So, when you have close and fill, notice that this one does have close gap. So when you surround your selection tool around all of these areas here, it will fill the enclosed areas and the almost enclosed areas, along with the area scaling that we have checked, that we talked about in the live tutorial, where this will go over. Let's go turn down the opacity. This will overlap the lines so that you won't have any gaps. And this is only, this is for only transparent. Let's go in here to demonstrate. If you, this will only work if you fully enclose your selection around the shapes that you want to fill. Now notice that I haven't fully enclosed it around the middle areas. Now if I let go of this, this will only fill in the ones that I have enclosed. And if I want to fill the middle areas as well, I will have to select around all of that. Likewise on this side, it won't fill what you haven't selected. So if I do this, if I didn't select all of this area, it's not going to fill. Yep, and now we go into the other target all colors. Now notice that close gap is now grayed out. So when you have this selected, let's change it to another color so we can see this nice purple color. You can fill any color that's already existing on this layer, but it will only do so for closed gaps. Let's just try this one first. So this will change it to purple. But if I clear this, let's delete the colors. If I select all of this, it's not going to fill this area with a little gap. Even, yeah, I mean, in the other one, in the other refer only to editing or refer to other layers, close gap is visible. It's not grayed out. This will fill this area even with a little gap. But for some reason, Target All Colors does not have close gap. You can, I think you can also, yeah, all colors means transparency as well. So just make sure if you're using this, just make sure that all the gaps are closed. Otherwise, you can use only transparent to fill in areas that are not fully closed. So this is best for plotting down base colors right after you've done your line art, and it will do the job. Okay, let's look at the other ones. Area surrounded by transparent. Let's make this blank again. Area surrounded by transparent. Oh, I don't think it's gonna show, but everything you've selected that is surrounded by transparent on your reference layer, which is the lines, these lines, outside of these lines are transparent. So that is gonna fill those things within your selection. This can be a little bit confusing, but basically you just filled the lines. And you also have only black. Let's test this out on the top layer because we have it as black. Yeah, so everything you've selected that is black will turn into your selected color here. Areas surrounded by black. Let's go back. Let's see if this is going to work on a different layer. Yeah, okay, so this will work pretty well if you use black as your lines, but if you use other colors as your lines, maybe try Target All Colors instead of areas surrounded by black. And this, you can just play around with all these settings. Only white and transparent. I won't go through all of them. So yeah, this works really well if you want to quickly fill gaps, or fill areas more like, on your canvas. Okay, so the other things that I have forgotten to mention, if we have maybe, as we're drawing, we have about 30 to 40 layers. I know that I myself like to, well, I tend to use a lot of layers in my drawing, and it gets really confusing which layer I'm supposed to be working on, and which layer that I am on, especially if you didn't rename your layers, or even if you did rename your layers, it's going to be hard to find, especially if you make a mistake and draw on a different layer that you're not supposed to be drawing on. I know this happens to a lot of us. So to quickly find the layer that you need to work on, just press Control Shift, like hold them, and you can see that your cursor has changed. Now I want to be on the top layer, so I'll just click on this and it will bring me to that layer. Likewise, if I do that for the color area, Control Shift click, it'll bring me to the layer that I want to find. And I find this really useful for when we have too many layers, or when we're confused about which layer we were drawing on, with a specific dot. Yeah, sometimes you have like a random dot on your page and you don't know where it is. this is a way to quickly find that layer. Let's talk about the subview panel. So by default, it's not going to be shown, but it will be right next to the navigator panel. But you can bring that out in Windows, and it's next to navigator. So if you click on subview, it will bring it up, and I have it on a separate area. So what the subview does is if you're drawing the same character over again, or if you're referencing someone else's character, if you're making a fan art, for example, and you want to have a sort of like color palette that you want to refer to, there is other ways you can do this. You can always make a new window or a new drawing, and I normally just like pull it. If you see this red line here, drop that here, and you have like a split window. I do this a lot with references, like pose references, or just looking at other people's style, for example. But if you want something for easy access to color drop, to color pick from a color palette, I would suggest using the subview panel. Yeah. So click this button called import. Hang on, let me just find. I have some character designs here for my OCs. Find the reference that you want. I'm gonna use Aiden Study. So you can use Photoshop files. They have a lot of supported formats here. You can bring in pretty much any of these. So I'm gonna use Aiden Study. I think this is the one with the colors. Nope. Is that Study? Good enough. So it will come up here. I know that's pretty small. You can adjust the size if you want to. Zoom in, and for example, I want to reference these colors. I can go and click this button, which is switch to eyedropper automatically. So I really like this feature. If you click this, switch to eyedropper, what happens is if I'm using, for example, if I'm using a brush and I'm drawing and I'm drawing and I want to reference his hair color, this will automatically use the eyedropper tool when you hover into subview. So this will save you a lot of time for when you're drawing characters that you have drawn before or will be drawing more often. So just go here, boom. Let me just make this brush bigger so you guys can see. Here, boom, brown, boom. This is so much easier than going into your second page, holding Alt for the eyedropper tool and then coming back in here and then having to click it again. I mean, I know it's only gonna save you like a few seconds, but it's definitely making your workflow much smoother, so you don't have so you won't be interrupted with having to go in here and tedious switching of the tools and stuff. So this is what I'm using subview most for. Now you can go and import, and you can actually select more than one at a time. I already have Seth selected, but if you go and select Aiden, Stella, and then go open, they will open up all of them, and you can switch between your characters easily. And if I go and zoom, here's Aiden, left and right, you can change between the files that you have imported. You can also fit to navigator will just make that fit to this navigator. Pretty straightforward. And if you unclick that, it'll go back to your zoom. You can also rotate them, flip them, and this will not affect your original file that you have imported in. I would suggest, if you have more than one character that you're referencing at a time, and by referencing I mean like the color dropping, because I normally for references I would normally use just a split view of a second window. But if I'm dropping colors and everything, if you have more than 3 characters, I would say it would be best if you put them all on the same file. So you have like, look here, we've got like 2 characters here that you can just zoom in and out of easily, and eyedrop whatever you need, instead of having to go through each one of them like that. That might waste some time if you're in a hurry. The next thing we're going to talk about is Mesh Transform. So this is kind of similar to the transform tool in Photoshop, with a little less options, I would say. So when you are making a sketch, for example, let's go back to the lines layer, and you think, oh, this area could do with some tweaking. Now go into the marquee tool and lasso this area, or lasso, I think it's lasso. You know, I'm not good at English. Yeah, Porky, we're learning new things even when you have had the program for a year already. So select the area that you want to tweak. Now go into Edit, Transform, and go down to Mesh Transformation here. It'll bring you up to this grid, and each of these points you can move around. So if I think the head needs to be a bit bigger right here, I can just drag that over, and I mean, this tool is pretty frequently used, so I will have no doubt that if you guys have the program, you'll probably know how to use this already. But this is more for those of you who don't have the program or are new to the program, to know that this is a thing. And it's very useful, and I use it a lot. And then you go enter, and this will save. Well, not save, but it will retain what you have changed. Yeah, that's Mesh Transform. Okay, so I'm actually going to bump vector layers up from our overview, because I think vector layers would probably be more interesting to learn about. Okay, let's see. Let's just delete these two layers that we have previously made, just so we have a fresh page that we can work on. Go back to full view. Okay, so what's different about Clip Studio is you have a vector layer instead of vector objects with something like Photoshop. And with a program like Paint2Sci, they don't even have the vector option. So on your layers panel, you have this thing called new vector layer button, which is right next to the new raster layer. Raster layer would just be the normal layer that you might use. So the second button is called new vector layer. Let's go and click on that. You'll have you'll see the little symbol here, which lets you know that this is a vector layer. So the great thing about vector layer is that you can use any pen, brush, whatever you want, and you will be able to edit this line later on. And this is probably one of my favorite things about Clip Studio, even though I haven't really used this as much as I should be. This will save you a lot of time if you're doing, like, if you're drawing comics, but it's still a very useful tool or feature for you to know about in your everyday drawing. So let's just go with the pencil. Okay, let's just draw any old line. Ooh, that's too small for you guys to see. Actually, you know what? I'll just go with oil paint. Might be easier. Alright, so I'm drawing a line here. Now, if you go into the third tool here called Operation, for those of you who have not used the Clip Studio that much, you might not know what this is. Basically, this will manipulate your line. You can change the little points here. So, for example, if you have drawn, let's go back to oil. If you have drawn a face shape or something, just roughly, and you think that this line is not perfect, you go into Operation and Object. You can click on this object, and it will treat each line that you make as one object. And if you just zoom in here, you can change this little bit, make it go in a little bit, or whatever. So for some of you guys, you might not know what vectors are. For those who do know, I will be talking about things that you already know, so you can ignore my rambling. But vectors are basically objects and lines or whatever that are calculated with a sort of algorithm, with a kind of formula in the program. So they will retain its information no matter how big you make this line into. So if you want to enlarge, so we're in the objects. If you want to enlarge this line, just drag that and it will not be pixelated at all. And it will retain its shape and size and everything, because it's been calculated by the program. Let's go back. And vectors are really useful for if you're changing the size of something and you don't want it to lose its quality. So what we call this is lossless. Select. There is, I think, an option that you can click. Select area by dragging. Okay, go into the tool property and the first drop down box and tick select area by dragging. I think this is when you, yeah. So if you want to select all of these, tick that, and then this will select all the lines that you have made and treat that as one object. And you can scale and do whatever you want as a whole. So the other thing I like about the vector layer is you can do a lot of things with the erase tool. Let's just draw something quickly as a way to show you guys. Okay, let me open up this one here in the subview. Oh, hang on, guys. I should have prepared this earlier. It's gonna be one of those, here's something I have prepared earlier. Do studies. Aiden study. Okay. Right, let's open this up. Which layer is that? Oh, great. This is a case of I don't know what's on my layers. Okay. Okay. With Aiden. Okay. So I want to line this guy. So let me just drop the opacity on that one. And I guess, yeah, I can draw over it. Oh, actually, sorry. Let me make a vector layer. Haha. Because that's what we were talking about before. And I'll use mapping pen. I mean, you can use any pen, really. Any pen will work. Any brush will work on vector layer. All right, so let's just say we're going to line this guy. I'm just gonna make some really rough lining. Okay. Whoops, that is not the nose I wanted. Okay, let's say it's hair. Drawing hair can be annoying sometimes, especially when you have. Oh, see, I'm keeping. I have to keep like Control Z a lot. You guys might know what I mean. When you don't have a line as perfect as you want, you just keep Control Z-ing. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I have these two lines overlapped. Let me. Okay. Go into the eraser tool and select vector. And in your tool property panel, over here, you have vector eraser. Now, my favorite part of this is this one here. Second one is called erase up to intersection. And if you have this selected, you can see that. Oh, did you see that? Let me just do that again. When you use your eraser and you erase up to here, it will delete the overlapping lines. Go here. I should be able to change the color of this thing. Brush size. Let's have a look. Correction, nope. It doesn't really matter. It was just, I wanted to make it easier for you guys to have a look at, to see exactly what it does. But, anyways, over here I've got overlapping lines on the ear. If I just go and erase that, it will delete the overlapping lines. Same goes for here. And you'll have perfectly aligned, pointed lines in just a matter of seconds. Same goes here, same for here, and they will be nicely tapered. I mean, the first time I discovered this tool, I was like blown away. So if you look at all of these, there's also erase whole line, which I suspect, yep, it erases the whole line. This just makes everything so much faster if you're kind of on a time crunch. I think that's what it's called. All right, so this line is not perfect. Let's go back to operation. Select this and maybe just rotate it so that it fits, or just do some tweaking. And now it fits. Yay! Now there's another tool that I think might be useful for you guys to know. Let's see. Brush. I cannot find it anymore. Oh, right. Anyway, continue on. We can also change the thickness of the brush size. You can do this. You can do that. Ah, yes, correct line. Sorry, guys. Here it is. It's called correct line. It's somewhere down the bottom. When you have selected this, you can actually change the thickness of one part of the line. Okay, what I wanted to show you guys is the simplify vector line. Yep, okay. This is green when you highlight it. So what this is basically a smoothing tool for your line. So if this line is too wobbly for you, like this one is to me, let's just do that, and ugh, okay, it has not done a really good job. So you might have to sort of test this out a little bit. Oh wow, that is bad. You can change how much you want. So the degree of smoothing Maybe I've just set it to too much. Let's give that a try. Oh yeah, this is better. This will make your line a little bit smoother. You might have to do it several times. Let's see. Will it have less? Yes, it will have less access points or anchor points. So this way you can manipulate the line much easier. So for a line that I haven't changed, see how I've got like so many of these anchors? If you want to move them, it's gonna look really wobbly. So if you go in and correct line, why is this not? Oh yeah, I'm an earlier. Simplify that. See, now you have less anchor points. So when you want to change the line will be much smoother. Okay, so back to correct line. We have something called correct line width. And you have options here to thicken or narrow. I mean, you guys can probably guess what this means now. If you go over this part of the line, well, it's not showing up. Let's just go with a higher number. Oh, wrong layer. Oh, why does this always do that? Okay. Yeah, this will thicken the line, but only at one point. That is too high a number. Let's go back down. So because I have simplified the vector line, this line has less access points or anchor points on there. So if I go correct line width, it will correct it by more. So for this untouched line, actually no, the nose. For this untouched line here, we'll have more anchor points. It will only thicken the area that you have highlighted. Here the chin. And likewise, you can narrow. So you can adjust the line widths even after you have drawn the line itself. There are also other options here that you can play around with. I won't go too much into that. And that's basically the vector layer and drawing on a vector layer and editing lines on a vector layer. Okay, so this one also you can connect vector lines. So I have drawn this face. I think you can see over here that these two lines are not connected, and lines here are definitely not. So what happens is you can connect them, and when you go into operation, you'll see that this line is actually now one line with 1,000,000 access points. These two are not connected. So if I go back, connect to these two, operation, it is now one line. Okay. So the next thing we're talking about is perspective guides. Now, this is another big one. Let's delete that. Oh. Okay. Okay, so the great thing about Clip Studio is that you can have perspective guides. What you have in Clip Studio is ruler layers. So if you go into layer, you'll see that you have new raster layer, which is the normal layer. You also have correction layer, which will be kind of like how in Photoshop you have like adjustment layers. But if you go into new layer, you also can see vector. Where's ruler? Ah, okay, no. Ruler / frame. And you can see here, create perspective ruler. So click on this. You get to choose how many points you want. Let's go with 3 points, just so I could show you guys what this means. Check create new layer, just so you don't ruin your other layer, I guess. Click OK. You're gonna be greeted with a lot of lines. So this is a ruler layer, specifically a perspective ruler. Now if you go and select operation and click on it, you can change these lines. The one horizontally is your horizon line. You see these little circles in the middle? If you click on that, you can change how high this is. And your other lines will move along with you. Click on the circle if you want to change the direction. And these little circles here, that will change the line itself, I guess. So this circle will not change this point, so it's not going to change your vanishing point. It'll just move the top part, but this will change the vanishing point. Same goes for these ones. And so if you draw anything on this layer, it will actually snap to these lines. So let's pick a pen tool. I want to go here. Oh. Every line that you draw is going to snap to that direction. This might be a little confusing at first because there's 3 directions that you can draw. But why is this not going? Okay. Ah, right, okay. Yeah, because it's 3-point perspective. Let's make this bigger. Just imagine we're drawing some kind of building. This is great for environmental drawings. So now you have a building, I guess. I mean, not really, but use your imagination. And all these lines will be snapped to that direction. Now, if you want to turn off the snapping, you can do that. You go into operation, click on these lines. Now, you see these little diamond symbols, I guess? Click on that, and this line will turn green. And this means that your lines will no longer be snapping to that axis. And this will turn both that one and that one off. Yeah. Now, if you go back to your pen, yeah, this line is not going to snap to that side anymore, I think. Yeah. See, if you want to go down, it won't go down anymore. But it will follow the other line of going that way. So it will no longer snap to this perspective line. What is it? Operation. Yeah. I'm getting lost again. And you can always turn that back on. And if you only want to use one of these lines, you can lock or unlock. So this line here is connected to the vertical one. So if we go back into our pen, this will only lock or snap actually to the vertical line now. Ooh. Okay, so you have your brush, everything is snapping. Now if you want to quickly doodle something on top of this, or you still want to see the ruler but not snap to it, there's a quick button here, snap to special ruler. Just unclick this, it's clicked by default. Unclick this and you can draw whatever you want now, but you can still see your rulers. And this applies to any layer that you're on, including the ruler layer. Perspective is not the only ruler they have. There is actually a ruler tool here. Let me just turn this one off so it's not looking really aggressive. Let's just make a new vector layer just for the hell of it. So go into the ruler tool and you have all these different kinds of rulers. Linear, curve. So the curve ruler is kind of like a so you have a first point, second point, and third point. You're gonna make a curve, double click to finish the line, and anything that you're going to draw is gonna be snapping. Oh, it is not snapping. Why is it? Oh yeah, if you draw close to that, like if you're outside of it, you can draw whatever you want. But if you start your line somewhere on this ruler, it will follow the curve. Let me make the brush bigger so you can see. There you go. I'm trying to go outside and it's not letting me, so that will follow the line. Let's delete this ruler. Oh, no, that delete. No, never mind. Let's just go back. Okay, go back to the ruler tool. There is something called the special ruler. You can also find perspective ruler here, which will make you, which will let you make these lines from scratch. Just like how we had the perspective ruler before, but if you go and make the perspective layer, it will already it will give you the 3-point perspective or 1 point or whatever, and it will make it ready to be used. And it will also make a new layer as well. Okay, let's turn this one off. Go into the special ruler. There are a lot of different special rulers that you can use. So go into the drop down menu and you can see that there's parallel lines, parallel curves, multiple curve, interesting, radial line. Okay. Oh. New layer. Okay, actually, let's just go to the vector layer that we made earlier. Okay, radial line. Click anywhere on your canvas and you'll see a little sun ray kind of thing. So you can probably guess what it does. If you go into your pen, anything you draw will follow this radial line. Now this is perfect for making action scenes, action lines, focus, what do you call them? Action focus? Oof, something like that. And this is great for when you're making a comic or when you're making an action drawing. It will snap to those guides. This is very straightforward. The next thing I want to talk about is the concentric circle. Click on that. This will make a circle or an oval. So the first click that you make will determine the shape of your circle, and the second movement you make will determine the angle. So imagine I'm drawing a wheel. Maybe like that, and I'll click to set. Now you're gonna have 3 lines here, but you can basically follow any of these lines. Go back to your pen tool or whatever you want to use. Every line that you make will be following this oval or circle. So now you can make perfect circles. Whee! Just imagine this is a wheel. Personally, I think this is very useful for if you're making something like ripples. Actually, wait, let's just go out of that. Okay. First drag the shape. I'm gonna click again because I don't want to change the angle of this. So I've made a circle here. Go back to your pen, and make some lines here. And this is gonna be your ripple lines. Okay, if you go onto another layer, you can see that you have made little ripple lines. Okay, so we've done with the special rulers. Now let's go to 3D models. Oh man, this is a big topic. We're gonna bring back the material. Over here, you've got 3D models. You have body models and you have pose. And this is available in both Pro and EX version. So let's just bring in, okay, let me delete the other layers just so we have a fresh page. I'm gonna have a new layer. Oops, sorry. Okay, bring in a body model. So all you have to do is drag it into your file, and you will now have a 3D body model. And you can, oh, this might be a little laggy, but you can move it around. These buttons will show you what you can do. Like this one will be panning. This one is enlarge, zoom in and out. And what you can do is you can actually change these body parts. Woo! And well, as with any 3D modeling tool, it will take some getting used to when it comes to like manipulating how these will act. So if you want him to bow, maybe like, there you go. And these lines will sort of tilt this area by the axes, so you can make the head turn around. You can make him nod. And this is perfect for when you're looking for that that pose you want to find, but you just can't find it. I normally actually would suggest you to just take a photo of yourself. Because this is actually kind of finicky. So it will take you a long time to get that obscure pose. It's probably easier if you just take a photo of yourself, or like ask someone to take a photo of you in that pose. But if you can't do that, you might have to look at how these 3D models work. I think, to be honest, these are actually not that difficult to manipulate. I have seen worse modeling programs or websites. Where there was an option somewhere where you can change the hand. Whoa, too big. Okay, let's just make this smaller. Oh, and move him to the corner. Let's go with pose. Drag a hand in. You know how much we need. Oh. Oh. I'm gonna have to experiment with this a little bit. Oh wow, you're tilting the actual guy. Okay. There was another option. Well, as you can see, I don't really use this option too much, so I can't actually find the option to change the little fingers. But you can actually change the fingers of a hand. I mean, you can just drag them one by one. But it will be... Wow, this guy's... Yeah. Pose Studio is a great and easy program for 3D models. Oh, okay, that's interesting to know. I don't really use this that much. Mainly because I either just take a photo of myself, my own hand, or I just try and find a pose online that I can reference. But it's good to know that this is an option and that it is available. Okay, let's go zoom out a little bit. I think I have too many on this. Can I delete this? Oh, yes, I can. Okay. Now, the other thing you can do with 3D models is you can convert them into line art. Let me just find my notes. Okay. Oh, let's just close this one. Okay, so now you have this pose. Let's just pretend we want to get this pose. Okay, go into layer, and down here it's called LT conversion of layer. I don't actually know what LT stands for, but if you click on this, you can select if you want to extract it into raster or vector. Let's just go with vector for the hell of it. You can change the line width and accuracy. There's a lot of options that you can change right now, but for now, let's just go okay. And it's gonna do a little bit of loading. And boom, your 3D model has been turned into lines. The 3D model is actually still there. It'll make a whole folder of all the lines and the tones. It will actually add tones to the shadows that you can toggle on and off. Yeah, it will sort this into a folder which can collapse. Now, if I just turn this off and turn this back on, your 3D model is still here. It's not going to go away. It'll just hide that. And on top of that, you have your lines. So it will make 2 lines. Let's just go in. 2 line layers and I think 4 tone and shading layers. If we just stop showing those and maybe stop showing that. So the top layer for the outline is the main outline. The second layer is all these little tiny details of where the shading will be. You might not need those, so let's just turn that off. And because this is a vector layer and I have selected it to be turned into a vector, you can now manipulate this. Since we have checked that select area by dragging, we can now select the ear, select this hand, and this is going to be converted in, yeah, this is converted into lines for you, which is very useful for when you're drawing something if you have a model gun that you want to draw, or for example a camera or something, and now you have those lines and you can continue your drawing with these lines. Okay, so we've talked about vector layers. Now we are coming to the last thing on the list, which is making your own brushes. Let's just get rid of this guy here. Okay, so you have downloaded your brushes and installed these brushes on there, but you find that not all of them are what you want to use, and you might want to make your own brush. So this is kind of simple, but it can also be a little bit confusing when you first start out. Oops. Okay, let's just make a new raster layer. Say I want to make a new brush. maybe a textured brush. And you want the shape to be like a square shape because you can't find one that you like. Let's just go and make a square with any one of these existing brushes. Oh, okay, no. First thing first, you have to remember, maybe, okay, let's go make a new one. I won't change it here, but basically what I need to do is make it gray. If you change it here, every time you make a new file, it will remember what you have changed last time. So you might get confused if you make a new artwork and then you start drawing and you're like, hey, where's my color gone? And you just forgot that you have changed it to gray. So let's just make a new file. And I think it is somewhere over here. File? Oh no. I can't find it anymore. Oh, great. If anyone know how to do this, just don't hesitate to tell me. View, I think it was. No? Color profile. Nope, that's not it. God damn it. Uh, duh, 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 duh. Well, let's just go with the other way that I know of. New file, basic express color, change this to gray. Now don't forget to change it back the next time you use it though. Otherwise you're gonna get a nasty surprise. But it's not too big of a deal. So you have a gray canvas. Actually, I forgot to mention something. Make it big enough. Maybe go into pixels. Make it about 2000 by 2000. Oops, that's 200. Resolution, make it 300 dpi. This should be big enough for your brush so that it won't become pixelated when you're trying to draw something. Okay, now we're talking. Let's just go back. Now to make your brush shape. Okay, let's just remember we were talking about, oh, that's not the right one. Delete, never mind. Okay, go with black color. Go and make a shape that you want. Fill this up, unless you want texture, then maybe. Something like that. Now that you have this shape, okay. Go to your paper and then turn this off, because when you're making your brush, it's gonna sample all of the layers, and if you have this turned on, that will be included in your brush. So go into Edit and go down to Register Material, and then click on Image, ... and you're gonna have this pop-up box. Let's just name this test brush. Make sure you tick this box, use for brush tip shape. I would not check any of these. Select a location to save your material. I think it's an image. Yes, okay. Just go into image material. You can always make a new folder for this, but I think for this simple tutorial, we'll just go and use the default brush. And here you have a search tag. Over here you can click on add new tag, just so you make this easier to find later. Let's just call it Eevee test. Press enter to save this as a tag, and just go OK. So this is now saved into your materials. So when we're making the brush, ooh, Giselle was saying something. No? Okay. Oh, okay. Bye, Giselle. Thanks for coming. Alright, so when we're making this brush, let's just go back into like our illustrations. What I suggest is using a ready-made brush already, just because they already have the settings already made for you. Now if you make a new one, it will just, you have to start from the beginning and you have to check every single thing. So it's easy if you want to base this brush off an existing brush. So I think it's right click. So okay, just pretend that, let's just say we're going to make a brush that's similar to the gouache brush. Here, go and right click on this one and go down to create custom subtool. I'm just gonna ignore that crepey creep. Okay, so click on this and this will prompt you to make a name. Let's just go Eevee test brush. Yep, direct draw, input process brush. So here we can change the icon that will show up. I'm just gonna leave it as oil paint, and this is optional, but excuse me. Check this if you want a background color. Now previously you might have noticed that some of my brushes have a background color. This is purely just to label the brushes so that you know that this is a custom brush or it's a brush that you are using. Let's just go and select a random color that you like. Aqua. Okay, and this will show up behind your icon. Click OK, and this is going to bring you back to your subtool detail panel. When we were editing the brush settings earlier, now you can change these settings. So anti-aliasing, you can change that if you want to. I'll just make it like medium. And I will be mostly editing the brush tip shape. The brush tip, sorry. Now, the best thing about it is you can have this on the side and test your brush as you are fiddling around with these settings. You can go in and zoom in. Okay, go into material and click add brush tip shape. Now, remember the brush shape that we made earlier, the square brush? Click on that. You're gonna have a whole huge list of things. And these are all like the default ones that you can use. You can either scroll down to the bottom and try to find it, or type in your tag, VV. And here it is, your test brush. Now, click OK. And this will make your square as your shape. So now your brush is a square shape. And then you can change these settings like angle if you want to change the direction of your pen. It could be horizontal or vertical. I mean, it's not gonna do too much because our brush is kind of like a rectangular shape. And rotation, direction of line, random. So when you check random, see the preview up here? It's gonna look all jumbled up. You can use this if you want some texture in your brush. And then go down here to brush density. If you want to change the density by pen pressure, you can check this. And you can test that out by I'm pressing lightly and pressing harder. So these will take that into consideration. Or random. Basically this these settings you can sort of play around with as you're making the brush. And just test out these settings to your liking, and it will show you the preview, and you can also test them out as you're doing this. There's also stroke. You can close the gap to make a denser brush or fixed, and you can change this. Ooh. Yeah, so that, oh, this is more scattered. So the gap won't change, it'll be a fixed number. You have texture if you want to add a texture. You can have these default textures, and I'm pretty sure you can download these and apply them as you see fit. Let's go with Dapple Cloud 2, just for the hell of it. So now your brush is gonna have a little bit of texture. I mean, it already kind of has a bit of a texture to begin with, but it will have the texture even more. And just as I mentioned before, you can add these onto the palette if you want, and it will show up in your tool property if you'll be changing these options frequently. Texture mode, okay, I mean, you can just play around with this. There's erase, there's correction. Oh, correction has this taper option. The higher it is, the more pointy your ends will be. It's not really obvious in this type of brush. Post correction will adjust smoothness of your line. See what happens now. If I lift this up, it will change. This is basically smoothing your lines. You can turn this off or on depending on what you need. Start and end. Let's go with brush size. I think this is nope, that's not working. Specified length by percentage, by fade. Okay, yeah, you can change these settings here to make your brush taper off. But this will do after you've lifted your pen up. I haven't really played with anti-overflow before. Strokes will not cross, over lines on the reference layer. Okay, so if you have a reference layer, this will not go outside of the lines that you have referenced. I mean, yeah, like I said, you can just play around with these settings. And once you're done, you can just close this window and your pen is ready, well, your brush is ready to be used. It's probably not the very best kind of brush though. But because we have made it in as a black and white or gray, we can set colors to it. So let's go with orange. If you actually used a second color in here, it will sample both your background and foreground colors. So it's gonna mess up your color. So it's best if you just use one color, unless that's what you're going for. That is basically how to make your custom brush. You can also make custom decorations, as we have demonstrated previously. I won't go into just the details of this, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Oh, that looks strange. Okay, so if you want to make your own pattern, go and make a new file and draw out these patterns. Now, if you want color in them, like this one, make them into color. But this also means that you can't change the color once you've applied this pattern. But if you have set it to gray, you can change the color. I think maybe not this one. But basically you can make your own what they call the tape brush. Yeah. Oh yeah, chain is the one that I was looking for. Yay. Ooh, it looks terrible when you make it big. Well, okay, I've noticed that if you go slow, it's gonna look really bad. But if you, okay, just delete all of that. But if you go fast, it's gonna make a smoother chain. So yeah, this is how you make new brushes. Well, your custom brushes. I think this is everything I have planned. For some reason, I thought that this tutorial is not gonna go over 1 hour, and I was very wrong because it is now 2 hours and 13 minutes in. My bad. Yeah, this is a beginner's guide to Clip Studio with a little bit of advanced editing of like making your brushes and like perspective rulers. If you guys have any questions, you can drop it in the VC chat right now. Don't worry, Dum Dum, I have recorded everything. I hope, yeah, it's recording. And I will edit the video, well, I mean, as much as I can. Maybe cut out some silences and stuff. And I will timestamp each topic so that it's easier for you guys to find. And I will be posting that to the Learning and Inspo channel. Thank you guys for coming. No worries. I'm very happy to have helped you guys understand this program so that it's less intimidating for you to go and start drawing with Paint Tool. What? No, Clip Studio. Clip Studio. Wrong tool. Whoops. Bloopers. Beep. If anyone has any questions, you feel free to ask me right now, or you can always tag me anywhere really. Main chat, second chat, VC chat if you want. Shibi asks, do we want a notification when Clip Studio is on offer? Actually, I did this last time. When it was on sale, I tagged everyone to let you guys know that it's on sale. If you want to be notified yourself, you can also follow them on Twitter. I think it's Clip Studio Paint on Twitter, and they will tweet out whenever they have a sale going on. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but your version is a pro. Oh, sorry. No, my version is the EX version. So I actually have all the extra tools for making multiple page comics, which I have shown at the beginning of the tutorial. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that my version is the EX version. But you can see that up top actually. So, yeah. And I also have these printing of fanzine button here that will not be available in the pro version. And also the other difference is when you go into animation, actually not in here, but you can make 24 frames. It's limited to 24 frames on the pro version, but if you have the EX version, you can make as many frames as you want. Oh, the stream screen didn't show. Oh no, that's alright. I think it got cut off on top. Oh, okay, yeah, it doesn't show the top. Interesting. But yeah, I think the other thing is that they have less limitations in the UX version for 3D modeling. But exactly what these options are, I actually don't really know. I don't really use the 3D model that much. But I'm sure you can search Google and find out exactly what is different between these two. But for the most part, if you're only gonna use Clip Studio to like draw and paint and stuff, Pro is enough, because pretty much what I have talked about today, all the features that I've mentioned today in this tutorial will be available to both versions. Okay, thank you guys for coming. It was very nerve-wracking for me to prepare this tutorial. And I've been talking nonstop for 2 hours, so my voice is almost gone now. Oh, also one more thing before you guys go. If we really enjoyed this, I want to know if you guys are interested in other tutorials, or I was thinking of making like a learn with me sessions, because I know that I don't know everything. I know that I don't know. Yeah, so I acknowledge that I don't know everything and I'm still learning myself. So maybe we can do like a pose study, learn with me session where I will study some poses and you guys can suggest poses for me to draw or teach you guys. So it's a bit more casual and not so much of a teaching thing, like I teach you how to do things, but more like just getting together and studying together. Kind of like a group study session, if you will. Yeah, so let me know if you guys are interested in doing these kind of things. I will make an announcement for this maybe tomorrow or the day after. And then I'll make like a little reaction poll kind of thing, so you guys can react to it and tell me if you want to attend. I was kind of surprised by how many people showed up, to be honest. I didn't expect, um, I mean, I didn't expect to have like more than 10 unique users. But I mean, if I have like one person wanting to study, I'm open to doing these kind of things. If there are other programs that you guys want to learn, like Photoshop, I can do that. I've used Photoshop for more than 10 years now. Yeah. Um, I might not know everything about Photoshop, like the animation stuff. I know a little bit, and there's also like 3D stuff now. I don't really know too much about that. But if you just want to know how to use Photoshop, I can definitely go over the program. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. Um, this has gone on for way too long. It's gonna be a pain for me to like edit and cut. Um, yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Yeah, I will let you guys know when I have finished with the video. So yeah, bye guys. Class dismissed.